Cool. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the final session of our Amplify Voices of the Global Majority series, focusing on food and environmental justice. And my name is Miles Newton, and I'm continuing to be your host for the duration, along with my co-pilot, Jessica Duravaj, on this continuous journey. And tonight, as the last but certainly not least presenter of our 9-session series, we are so happy to welcome Aisha Shillingford of Intelligent Mischief, who is going to be leading us in this session titled Giving Birth to the Future Beyond Apocalypse, a Dreamspace for Futures of Love, Regeneration, Interdependence, and Abundance. And once again, we'd also like to share with you our survey that we just dropped into the chat as well. So please let us know and give us your feedback on how your experience has gone. And as we have been doing, we are partnering with changemakers from around the globe to dismantle inequity, mitigate harm, steward the planet, prioritize collective wellness, and stress interdependent liberation. And throughout history, voices of the global majority, Black, Indigenous people of color, have been at the forefront of breaking down barriers of systemic issues that affect both the planet and humanity while ushering in radical change. Whether that's been bringing yoga to the West or fighting injustice on the front lines of society. And this time has required us to continue to listen and to work to heal historical wounds and to continue to do something differently than we have been. And because we enter into this work as an act of community care, because as we know, none of us can be well unless all of us are well. So again, we welcome you into this inspired, shared space, and we are so happy to be here with you all. And honored to be gathered today, virtually located in the Berkshire Hills of Massachusetts on the unceded territory of the Stockbridge-Munsee Band of Mohicans. And on behalf of Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health, we welcome and invite you to share in the chat the lands that you are coming from and joining us from and its indigenous inhabitants. And you can take a moment just to drop that right into the chat as you have been. And today, as you also know, we as a nonprofit educational organization that's dedicated to empowering people and communities to realize their full potential through the transformative wisdom and practice of yoga, are stewarding Kripalu lands today. And it is that through the generous gifts of our donors, this Amplify Voices of the Global Majority series has been possible. And so we thank them, and we thank you for your presence with us along the way of this past week of all these incredible presenters. And as part of this collective space we share, we are also giving our community agreements into the chat. So please take a moment to read those over and acknowledge that by being in this space with us here, you are opting into those and that we thank you for doing so. So just before I pass it over to Jessica, let's take a moment just to take in one good breath in through the nose. And let it out with a sigh, letting any of the little stresses just melt away for a moment. And if you need another breath, take one more in through the nose and let it out. And thank you all.
Thank you, Miles, and thank you everyone for being here. Y'all, I can't believe that this is the last session of Amplify, and I'm going to tell you right now, please, please, please go to Instagram, go to Intelligent Mischief, and let that count inspire you to dream a world into being. It is beyond my pleasure to introduce Aisha Shillingford, and I will just say that that I was like saying so many prayers that she would be a part of this series. Her work is so profound. It has influenced me in so many ways. I'm so deeply grateful. And to have artistry and creativity as a part of the journey that we have been on is such a privilege. It is such an honor to be able to have listened and absorbed and witnessed so many incredible conversations and been a part of and participated in so many incredible conversations. And now to have this opportunity to integrate creativity with this incredible guide. So I'm gonna introduce her properly. Aisha Shillingford is an anti-disciplinary artist, world builder, designer, and cultural strategist, originally from Trinidad and Tobago. She is the artistic director of Intelligent Mischief, a creative studio unleashing Black imagination to shape the future. Aisha is an alumna of Laundromat Project's Creative Change Fellowship, a member of the New Museum Incubator, and an inaugural fellow at the Race Forward Butterfly Lab for Immigrant Narrative Strategy. Her written work has been published in Black Discourse and Grantmakers in the Arts. Her work has been commissioned by the Movement for Black Lives, Root Rise Pollinate, and Creative Wildfire. She has a BA in Environmental Analysis and Policy, a Master's in Social Work and Social Innovation, and an MBA in Social Entrepreneurship. She has studied graphic design, future design, design fictions, design thinking, and streetwear design. She has been a lead community organizer at the Muslim American Society Boston chapter and at Close to Home DV, Domestic Violence Prevention Agency, director of Racial and Economic Justice at the New Economy Coalition, senior associate at Interaction Institute for Social Change, and deputy director of Innovation Strategy at Movement Strategy Center. Let's take a deep breath into that greatness for one moment. And just honoring that divine assignment that our facilitator has in this world to bring this work to us this evening. Miles will be available for you tonight if you need any support, so please feel free to DM them in the chat. And as always, there'll be an opportunity to participate. So without further ado, it is our pleasure to welcome Aisha Shillingford.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Jessica. Thanks, Miles. Thank everyone so much for welcoming me into the space of Kripalu, into the space of this convening this past week. It's such an honor to be here, to be sharing space with all of you. We talked a little bit about me and about the work of my studio, so I won't dwell too long on this, except to say that I'm situated right now in Brooklyn within the unceded lands that have been and continue to be stewarded by the Lenape people. So as Jessica and Miles both shared, the purpose of this evening is to support us to metabolize the learnings from this week, to process those learnings through creativity and through imagination into bold visions of a future based on love, interdependence, and abundance. And so part of our intentions for this evening is the acknowledgement that we all need space and time to dream beyond the current reality. Many of the speakers this week shared with us ideas and invitations and practices and works that they're engaged in and projects that they're building in relationship to new, sometimes old realities that are being brought back into the fore, new realities, new ways of being, and so on. And so the idea is that this evening will be a space and a time for us to do some of that dreaming beyond our current realities, our current systems, into the new realities and new systems that we were invited into over this past week. Another one of the intentions that I invite us to hold is that we are our ancestors' wildest dreams, and that part of what we're doing is reclaiming our right and responsibility to imagine wildly on behalf of our future descendants. And so really it's an invitation into what some might call 7 generations thinking, thinking or assuming being, thinking of ourselves as good ancestors, but thinking beyond our current generation and our current time, inspired by the past and taking responsibility for dreaming and imagining on behalf of the future. Another intention or invitation is that the apocalypse is something that has already been happening. It's not necessarily something that is this big moment that's coming sometime in the future, that for many people, they've been experiencing an apocalypse for the past 500 years or so because of colonialism. And when we speak about the apocalypse in this context, we speak about systems that are transforming, that are changing dramatically at their roots. And so we recognize that perhaps we are at the cusp of another kind of apocalypse in a way, a time of great transition and transformation, a time when our systems as we know them are crumbling, and in the cracks, there's room to insert our imaginations for what comes next. And that in fact, if we don't actively exercise our imaginations around what these systems will transform into, there's a great risk that these systems will continue, that the crumbling of these systems will continue to cause great harm to those who've already been disproportionately harmed. And then another one of our intentions or invitations is that when we speak about the future, it really is about what we choose to do right now. That in futurism, Afrofuturism, imagining the futures, we're using the future as a, sort of as a way of thinking outside of the constraints, of our current system, outside of the obstacles that we might find in our way. But it really is not so much about what we think the future is going to be like, but about what we desire for right now, what we choose to do for right now, in the course of shaping new realities in a desired future. So a few guardrails for how we might engage in this time together. The first is that you're welcome to be in the process of building muscle for imagination. One thing we found in our work is that often the systems that we exist within tend not to be conducive to bold imagining beyond them. That we might be, one second, there's a siren passing next in front of my home. That the systems around us, by and large, exist to tell us that there are no alternatives. And so the act of believing in and actively creating other alternatives might be something that we need to build the muscle for. It might not come so easily to us. We might need to remember what it's like. We might need to strengthen our capacity to imagine. And so the invitation is to be okay with being in a process of building that muscle, to not stress too much about how wild and bold our ideas might be. And in fact, that we're not going to be required to share any of our imaginings with the group. It really is just a time for each of us to daydream, to reflect on what we've learned and heard and interacted with this past week, and to see what we might shape that into in terms of new worlds, new systems, new realities, etc. The third invitation is to embrace creativity for its own sake. Again, there's no specific outcome of the creative and imaginative work we're going to do tonight. It's a time for you to bring any kind of tools, whether writing, drawing, painting, if it's an iPad, a sketchbook, what have you, to bring any of those that might support you to just engage the knowledge gained this past week through creative means, and to just sort of be in that space of making and creating for its own sake, as a way of knowing, as a way of metabolizing and processing. And then last but not least, I invite you to get really comfortable. If you feel comfortable with your cameras off, feel free to turn them off. If you want to have some tea, some food, other drinks, if you want to be cozy under a blanket, if you want to be outside walking while on your phone, be as comfortable as you need to be, as long as you are able to be present as possible. So I'll just give us a few seconds to gather any materials we might need, whether that's pencil and paper, charcoal, pastels, crayons, markers, paint, whether it's just a pen and paper to write with, Play-Doh, anything. And as folks are gathering those materials, we're going to support ourselves to get into the frame of mind, frame of heart for imagining. And part of that is sort of building our awareness and tapping into parts of our intuition, as it were. So the invitation is to, if you're seated, to get settled in your seat and to plant your feet firmly on the ground if that is available and accessible to you. The idea is to just really settle as much as possible and to find as much balance as you can. And at first, we're just going to notice our breath. So we're not going to do anything with it specifically. We're just going to see if we can draw our attention to our breath, to just notice what our breath is doing. Are we holding our breath? Are we taking shallow breaths, deep breaths? Do we find it uncomfortable to focus on our breath? You're just paying attention and noticing what's going on with breath. And if it's accessible to you, I invite you to take a deep breath. And to release. And as you take a second deep breath, I invite you to notice how that breath feels in your body. Notice how your lungs feel. Notice what your body does as you take that deep breath. What part of your body moves. And as you continue to breathe, I invite you to continue to be curious about your breath. And if it feels possible for you, you might imagine or visualize that breath entering your lungs and imagine your lungs filling with air. And then as you release, imagine that air leaving your lungs and exiting back out through your nose or mouth. And as we continue to breathe, I invite you to start to pay attention to other parts of your body. And the invitation is to just check in. So you might start by checking in with your feet, if that is available to you, and just seeing how they feel, especially after a long day. You might wiggle your toes, your feet, if that's available, and just check in. How are feet feeling? How are heels feeling? And you might move through from your feet to your calves and shins, if that's available. And you're just checking in. Is there any tension that needs to be released? Is there any other sensation that needs to be given some attention or some care? Any part of your legs that need a stretch or a wiggle? And we're going to continue scanning through our thighs, if it's available, and our hips, Just checking in. Where might I need to stretch later on or right now? Or where's feeling great? And it's reminding me of gratitude for a way in which I used my legs. Maybe I went for a run or a hike or did some yoga or rode my bike. Where are you feeling strength or power? We continue scanning through our core, our stomachs, our backs, through our upper bodies, our chests, our back, shoulders, arms, down through our forearms and our fingers, our necks, our faces, our head. Just checking in with how you are. And next, I'm going to invite you to draw your awareness to your senses. So you might begin with becoming aware of temperature or sensation, if that's accessible to you. What temperature is it in the room? How does your clothing feel against your body? How does it feel if your body pressed against your chair, your couch, or your bed, or the floor? And just tapping in, bringing our awareness to those points of slight pressure. Then we might bring our awareness to our sense of smell, if it's accessible. Can we smell anything? What do we smell? We might bring our awareness to our sense of hearing, if it's accessible. What do we hear? Maybe it's the light buzz of the computer, sounds in our immediate environment, sounds outside of our homes, if we can hear them. If your eyes are open, you might bring awareness to what you can see around you. And the invitation is to become so aware of our own breath and bodies and environment that we begin to, in some ways, sort of thin the distinctions between who we are and where we are and what we are feeling. And as we continue to breathe, I invite us to think of ancestors, people, perhaps family members, not necessarily family members, people who inspire us towards love and regeneration and interdependence, people whose actions, whose decisions have made our lives possible. And if it's possible, you might identify some specific persons. And our invitation is to send love back to these ancestors by way of gratitude. So you might identify a person or a few people and just send gratitude back to them for making your presence today possible in some way. And then we'll cast our attention to people with whom we work, with whom we collaborate, beings with whom we interact, and perhaps even beyond that, those who we know are engaged in cultivating love and regeneration and interdependence, but maybe we haven't met them. We may not know their names, but they might be doing good work somewhere far afield. And to those folks, we send love by way of solidarity. And then I invite us to think forward into the future. 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 or more generations. These are people who we will likely not meet. People who will be impacted by the decisions we make today. People whose lives will be made possible by our actions, by our choices, by the lives we're living. People for whom we hold a responsibility for leaving a habitable planet, a safe as possible place to be, for whom we're responsible for leaving wisdom. And to those folks, we send love by way of hope and vision. And as we sort of feel ourselves surrounded by our ancestors, by those who live at the same time as us who are doing good work, and by those for whom we're responsible for in the future, perhaps we begin to feel a sense of connection across time and across space. So I invite us to open your eyes. And our first invitation is a free write invitation. You can respond every time I invite to write. You might engage in whatever creativity you desire. So it could be free paint or free sketch. But we'll have 5 minutes. And the invitation is to reflect on who has taught you about love, regeneration, and interdependence. What did they teach you? So we'll spend about 5 minutes reflecting on who has taught you to love, who has taught you about regeneration, who has taught you about interdependence, and what have they taught you about those things. So we'll spend 5 minutes reflecting, and you can sketch, you can write or journal. You can begin to paint if you're planning to paint this evening. If you're collaging, you can begin to collage. And the invitation, I'll say, you can answer this question as directly or indirectly as you feel called to. So you could literally name or image those folks. Or you might just let the question move through you and see what you're called to make in response to this question. And I'll put on a little bit of music for us during these free write moments.
Sumali Banglana Sotege Sumali Nalio Nikumala Nalu Jana Mamani Jako Mamani Nalio Nikumala Nalu
And as our time for this first free write comes to a close, I was curious if anyone wanted or felt compelled to share in the chat and any of what came to mind for them. No requirement, but it just occurred to me that it might be nice if anyone was feeling called to do so, to share in the chat. What came up for you in response to this question? Thank you for sharing, Rachel. Thanks for sharing about the farmers and gardeners in your family. Beautiful. Thank you. So our next invitation, as we start to get into thinking about world building, world making, and please let me know if you can't hear me because of the music, and I can turn it down. So the question for the next little free write is, what must be true for a world based on love, regeneration, and interdependence to exist? And what stories must we tell to uphold these values? So what would have to be true? What would have to be true for a world based on love, regeneration, and interdependence to exist? And what stories would we have to tell in order to uphold and sustain these values? So we'll take 5 minutes again to just sketch, draw, reflect, or respond.
Suda kodam free sudi toide. Nego suda kodam free sudi toide. Elena got a mother. Faba your lady tampuri. Beya immodaro. Beya immodaro. Be jodo edumudu. Beya tampu beya ta haihune.
And once again, feel free to share some of your reflections in the chat so others can see if you like, no pressure. But if you're feeling like sharing with each other what's coming up, feel free to do that. All right, we're gonna move on to the next prompt. this is a prompt to, an invitation to imagine. We are invited to travel through time to a future world where love, regeneration, interdependence shapes all of society. What does that world look like, feel like, smell like, taste like, and sound like? In this future world, where love, regeneration, and interdependence is shaping our society, what does it look like, feel like, smell like, taste like, and sound like? And one invitation is, as you're responding or reflecting, is to not to judge your responses as they come up, not to uh, dismiss them. It's maybe to lean into them with curiosity. Um, there are no right or wrong answers. It's just what might be coming through you in response to the questions, and to like be curious about your responses. Um, and to start with the thing that comes first, because you never know what's behind that initial thought or response. in this future world based on love, regeneration, and interdependence, how are people relating to each other? I see some folks already in the chat already kind of starting to reflect on that. How are people relating? What relationships are treasured and supported? And what rituals and ceremonies and holidays exist to honor and celebrate our love, our regeneration, and our interdependence? How are we relating? Which relationships are treasured and supported? And what are our rituals, ceremonies, and holidays that honor and celebrate our love, regeneration, and interdependence? So as we start to think about or dream about and imagine the ways of being and our values and our sort of aspects of our culture in this future society, we start to then think about sort of larger scale interactions. So in this future society where, you know, almost everything we do is based on love, regeneration, and interdependence, what does power look like and how do we make decisions? Who's making those decisions? What is our understanding of power in a future society that's based on love, regeneration, and interdependence? In other words, how would these values shape our understanding of power and decision making? How would they shape the way we govern? in this society, how are people learning? What does education look like? What does it mean? How are people learning? And what does that look like? And what is the purpose of education in a society based on love, regeneration, and interdependence? There's some beautiful world building happening in the chat. How do we steward and distribute resources? And what does work look like in this society? A society that values and centers love, regeneration, interdependence, and infuses it into every part of life. What does that mean for how we steward and distribute resources? What do we think of as resources, even? And what does work look like in such a society?
ጠቀለለችው በጨርቅ ሊፈጸም የኢሳይያስ ነገሩን እንስሳትም ትንፋሻቸውን ገበሩ ከዚያ ቦታ ከብት ጠባቆች ነበሩ ያዩ ነበር ካሉበት ቦታ ድረስ የብርሃን ጎርፍ ከቤተልሔም ሲፈስ እረኞችም የብርሃኑን ጎርፍ አይተው እጅግ ፈሩ ምን ነገር ነው ብለው መልአኩም ፍርሃታቸውን አርቆ ነገራቸው ተድላ ደስታውን አድንቆ ልዑል አምላክ ለአዳም ብሎ ተዋርዶ ከድንግል በዳዊት ከአራዊት ባህሪ ተወልዶ ጨርቅ ለብሶ ከበረት መሃል ተጥሎ አለላችሁ ሄዳችሁ እዩት በቶሎ እንዲህ ብሎ ሲናገራቸው በዜና ከሱ ጋራ ብዙ መላእክት መጡና አቀረቡ ከእረኞች ጋር ምስጋና ስብሐት ለአብ ለወልድ ለመንፈስ ቅዱስ ለዓለም እስከ ዘላለም ድረስ።
ዓይንሽ እንዳልጠላሽ ፈራሁኛ
All right. So in this society, and if you notice, we're sort of getting a little bit more, I don't want to say complex, but we're sort of going from values and stories and rituals and relationship to thinking about structures like shared broad interactions. How do we address conflict and harm in this society in a place that has the values we talked about and approaches work and stewardship of resources, and where we relate to each other and other beings in the ways that we've been reflecting on? How do we then address conflict and harm in such a society? How do our approaches to conflict and harm center love, regeneration, and interdependence? And if anyone's having a hard time also thinking of specific answers, that's totally fine. What I'm noticing is that if you kind of like doodle or draw or sketch, that sometimes you can process a bit subconsciously. So it doesn't have to be a specific clear idea, but it can actually be coming through like in your drawing, in your painting. If you think of poetry, that might be another way to sort of interact with some of these questions. So of course, the direct specific answers are most welcome for sure, but for anyone who's feeling any kind of like trouble to think of anything specific, as you're creating and making and writing or just reflecting, just kind of doodle and draw and sort of see what comes through for you. I'm just noticing that for myself as I'm kind of drawing and responding on my own on the side in my sketchbook as well.
የፍቅር ወጥመድ ነው
Right. So I'm gonna invite us to take a 10-minute break. And you can use this break, of course, however you like, whether it's to tend to yourself, to people in your environment, in your space. If you just want to use the break to like reflect and process through some of the questions or continue working on your creative piece, please feel free. But we'll come back together at 21 past the hour and move into the rest of the session. We'll come back together. Hope folks are back. Just give me a few seconds for folks to come back in. So we spent the last half an hour or so reflecting on cultivating, manifesting, constructing, creating, desiring a future society based on love and regeneration and interdependence. And we thought about, you know, what the values of such a place might be, and the relationships and the stories and the ways of being, the rituals, the ceremonies, the way we interact with power, the way we learn, the way we steward resources, the way we navigate conflict and harm. And if this society is to exist, is to be possible in the future, then how did it come to be? And the invitation here is to think about the time between then and now. So if we were to situate ourselves in that future and look back at the history of that future, how did that future come to be? How did that place come to be? How did we navigate from the way we live now to that society that we all saw, that we all described or reflected on or witnessed? What pivots or bold leaps did we make? What did we do differently? How did we move differently together? What inflection points did we navigate? What happened to make this future possible? What challenges did we face and how did we overcome them? How did this future society come to be? What did we change? What did we begin to do? What did we stop doing? What did we do more of? What did we do less of? What parts of ourselves did we expand or grow or amplify? Who did we learn from? Who did we listen to? Who did we include? So many ways to get to this future. Which ways did we choose? What did the path towards this future look like? What felt hard, but we did it anyway? Who did we allow to guide us? What did we do with what we had available? Seeing such powerful things in the chat. Thank you to the crew that's holding it down in the chat. And this might be a place too where we might think about those generations of descendants that we imagine. What did we pass forward to those generations? What did they continue to move forward with that made this future possible? Mm-hmm.
dañu tëj bor yi di ñu tëj ba tey jii ñun mënatuñu rëcc ñun dundatuñu.
I just realized that with the music, if anyone is feeling called to like dance in response to these questions, that would be so welcome. Obviously, you know, you might already be doing that in your own space, but I'm just maybe naming something I'm feeling that there's so many ways to respond to these invitations, these questions, these kinds of reflections. There's so many ways to imagine. We can bring forth, specific thoughts and ideas that we might already be holding in some of the work that we're doing. We can use our words, we can write poetry, we can paint, we can sing, we can dance. There are so many ways to create this future and sort of respond to these questions, as many ways as there are to make this future possible over the next, few decades or so. Okay. So we're getting ready to return back to 2023. We spent, some time in this future world. We understood what it could look like, what it could feel like, smell like, taste like, how we could be with each other, how we could govern and make decisions, and how we could learn and steward resources. We know what it's like now and what that future could be like. We also know what it might take to get there. So we have a lot of wisdom about a path towards a future based on love, regeneration, and interdependence. And so the invitation is to think about one thing that we might bring back from that future, from our experience of that future, to share about our journey so that we can make that future real right now. So many of the things we named, so many of the ways of being and the paths and the choices are possible now, because if we can imagine it right now, it can be possible now. And so the invitation is to think of an object or an artifact that you might want to bring back. What evidence of that future would you want to bring back to share? Or a practice, a way of being. What is a way of interacting in that future that you might want to share with others? What is a space, something you saw or visited in that future? Or perhaps an identity or role that you would play in this future world. So the invitation is to think about an object, an artifact, or a practice or way of being, a space or location, something that you saw, an identity or role that you would want to play in this future world. And once you've sort of gathered those thoughts, or maybe something just pops into mind or comes into sort of your mind's eye, so to speak, the invitation is to we'll actually just take 15 minutes to recreate. And the idea is that you spend some attention sort of making this artifact, this object, this ritual, this way of being, sort of giving it some shape, some form. You could describe it. It could be a sketch of it. It could be a prototype of it, an image of it. You can represent it in any way that you like, but we'll take about 15 minutes to create that artifact. And I'll move it back to the slide that describes them, if that's helpful.
Duguşum duguşum malde
You might choreograph a movement. You might create a song, a poem. You might sketch an object. You might paint a scene. In any way you desire to represent one aspect, one component of that future world, so that you can share it with others, so that they might be encouraged, they might increase in hope, they might join you in co-creating that world right now.
ረግቶ ላይን ያስጠላሽው ክፉና ደጉን እያየሽው ግርድናም ሰልችቶሽ መጠጊያ አጣሽው ለኔ ስትይ ነው እንዲህ የሆንሽው ላም ቀንዷ ከብዳትም እናት በመሆንሽ እኔ
We'll take about 3 more minutes. 3 to 4 more minutes.
ከሰውነት ወጥተሽ እንዳልተፈጠረ ሲከፋሽ እየሳቅሽ ሆድሽ ያረረ ለትልቅ ለትንሽ ሎሌ መሆንሽ መሆኑ ተረዳኝ ለኔ ለልጅሽ ዋ ዋ ዋ ዋ መቼም ጎተራ ነሽ ባጥንትሽ ቀርተሻል ስጋሽን ጨርሰሽ ምናልባት ፈጣሪ የማያልቅበት ነው ቢሳለቅብሽም በትዕግስት ማረፍ ነው ሀሳቤ ከልቤ እንዳልፈጽምልሽ እጄ ስላጠረ እግዚአብሔር ይክፈልሽ ኧረ እድቼዋለሁ መቼም አያልቅም ዋ ዋ ዋ ዋ ዋ
We'll take just 1 more minute. Or 1 minute until I bring us back, but you can take as much time as you like on your creation, especially beyond this time. Okay, so we're gonna come back together and I'm gonna stop sharing. And I'm gonna turn down my music on my end a little bit. And our invitation is, if anyone is interested to share either something that they worked on during this time, or to share any thoughts or reflections, I just want to open the space in case anyone feels called to do so. No pressure or requirement at all, but if anyone feels moved and wants to share any of their ideas or any of their creations, the space is open. And if no one wants to share, we can just listen to music together for a few moments. And if you're moved to share any thoughts, reflections, or what you created, feel free to come off mute and do so. Oh, there's a raised hand. Go ahead, Rush.
Hello, I was thinking about the role that I would play, not so much what I would bring back, but I think just an archivist kind of, and a sharer of knowledge. So kind of like just that, and not even so much a storyteller, but a person who kind of bridges and makes sure that people are able to come together and share their stories. So that's what I would like to. That's the role I would like to play.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Thanks for
Thank
sharing
you.
that. Go ahead, Sumoy.
Hi, yeah, I actually was imagining energy, and I did something similar. I was imagining energy, like in the idea, let's say, even they had the thing about harm and stuff like that, that it's almost like that the feelings could permeate, so the person could compassionately share the pain and suffering, but also share the joy. Kind of like the field, how we're all energy. So I had something similar that I did, and like this, I did this before in the past with the female as being red, and then male is silver and blue is consciousness. But then I was having things that I was doing, like where they're all energy fields and the communication, and I was thinking of education almost like a diffusing out, like on a cosmic consciousness where you're getting the knowledge from the field. So I did these two different things, and these are sort of like figures dancing similar. I didn't paint it in. It would be something like with different male female energies, you see, like this, but I didn't get a chance to paint it in.
Wow.
And so that, and then this is different dancing energies, where it's almost like the consciousness of two souls dance, and then a consciousness of two other souls dance, and like these are little souls in the distance and in the future, kind of like, but it's still part of a field. So that's what I came up with, but it's I mean, I kind of saw it, and then I was I took a nap, actually. I kind of was taking a nap,
Nice.
8-minute break. But yeah, so that's this is what I came up with. The tape around it, really, when it comes up, it's white.
Right.
So and then I had used masking fluid, which when you pull up creates white.
That's
So
beautiful.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. Those are really beautiful. Thank you. Oh, you're on mute now.
No, I'm making something called the Red Book. This is liminal dreaming.
Wow.
But I keep thinking about the consciousness.
That's stunning. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Would anyone else like to share either what you created or what you were sort of moving with during the time? Or any reflections? Check out the chat a little bit. Okay, I'll take the pressure off. And oh, there's a question. Oh, thank you, Amy. That's so generous of you. Thank you. I'm not sure that I have like a clear answer. I mean, there on our website, there are ways to sort of connect to us in other ways besides the Instagram. So our website is, let me put it in the chat. Thank you. Well, I'd love to thank all of you for coming and spending time and dreaming together. It was such a joy and pleasure to be in space with you and to, sort of be able to create space for dreaming and imagining and world building and making. And I think one of my thoughts or reflections about these sessions is that, everything that we dreamed and articulated is possible. And so my hope is that it can infuse or amplify the work that we're already engaged in and doing, and whether it's through art making or organizing or yoga or what have you, that we are able to access dreaming and the power of making those dreams reality. So I'll pass it back to Miles to close this out if there are any other things you want to share.
Yes, and also I'll add myself. There we go. So thank you all for joining us. It's been a wonderful week plus. And thank you, Aisha, for this wonderful session where everyone got to kind of express and collaborate together. And we're just very thankful that you all joined us. And you'll also be receiving an email that gives you all of the resources, and access to everything will be directly through your union.fit account. So you can just log into there, and that'll give you access to the recordings if you want to revisit them along the way. And the email should also help you kind of collect all the resources in one space so that you can really delve in over the next year that you'll have access to it for. And we also hope that you'll let us know about how your experience was with the survey, and that you go off inspired and get out into nature and into the world, and that this has sparked something new. And so we look forward to seeing all your sparks as they go out into the world and into the future. So keep building, keep creating, and curating your experience. Bye.